Hello, witches, familiars, and Nerd Initiative familia. It's Max Taff coming to you with a recap of what we learned this week on Agatha All Along's Episode 7, Death's Hand in Mine. Let's get into it. So, this week, sad to say, we lost Lilia Calderou. Rest in peace, Lilia, wherever you are. Man, that was rough. She really became one of my favorite characters on this show. She just brought that motherly, nurturing spirit to the coven. She really wanted her other sister witches to succeed. She always had that kind of a vibe about her. She was always encouraging everybody and just all around such a great gal. Man, but what a way to go out. My God. Let's talk about, first of all, my theory. If you've been watching my videos the last couple of weeks, my theory on Lilia's trial and her powers and how all of that works, her time slipping, as I called it, all came true. So, little pat on the back to me. But in all seriousness, I mean, it was great to see the combination of everything they've been building up to since the very beginning of the show. All these weird moments, these weird disassociative episodes where she would get confused and lost in the moment, all finally made sense when we realized that a lot of this had to do with her trial in the Witch's Road and these so-called gaps, as she called them, that she's actually been experiencing her throughout her entire life. So I was correct. She was doing a form of time slipping, something we kind of were introduced to in Loki season 2. So it's interesting to see that she kind of had no control over her powers, and she had been struggling to control them since she was a child, which ended up having her kind of put off using her abilities at all just because she felt like she was living her life non-chronologically, which, I mean, can you imagine being a child and then all of a sudden being a fully grown adult dealing with adult things and then back to a child and a teenager and then an old person and everywhere in between just all of the time? Just sounds really horrible because it's bad enough being one of those things at one time. Imagine being all of them all the time, all day. That just sounds rough, Lily. I feel your pain. But just so interesting to see that that was actually part of her skill set. And I really love the way the showrunners and Jacques Schaefer showed this by having her kind of flashing back to her original maestro or her original teacher, the woman who we saw initially back in episode 3 in Lilia's hallucination. It was really interesting to see that kind of full circle moment. We finally get to see this woman alive, get to see her relationship with Lilia again, kind of like a nurturing motherly figure, someone definitely trying to teach Lilia to control her magic, her abilities. So that was really cool to see. And what was really interesting was the fact that throughout all this time slipping back to those moments, we see her continuously slipping back to her very first lesson on how to control her magic, her powers, which I thought was really cool because it's like, she's really like, I mean, basically at the end and going back to almost the beginning. So that was really crazy and kind of full circle for her, especially. We did learn a few key things from these moments with her old teacher or her old instructor, her maestro, whatever you want to call her. We learned that Lilia's coven did not die during the Spanish Inquisition, which I predicted or which I was assuming, which would have been a very cool way for them to have gone. No, instead they died of fever. Kind of was like a quick write-off of that. I really think the Spanish Inquisition would have been cooking because it would have made a lot of sense, especially like I've been kind of talking about. Lilia's always had this kind of chip on her shoulder about the way witches are portrayed. Could have gone hand in hand with like the Inquisition, you know, stereotyping witches, killing them for those reasons. So I really think that it could have been cooking with some gas there, but oh well, we got a fever instead. But some interesting things that we learned in reference to that was the fact that Lilia's had her fair share of experiences with death. And what do I mean with death? Well, the big reveal of this episode actually was the fact that it finally came out that Aubrey Plaza's character, Rio Vidal, is Lady Death, the incarnation of death, whatever you want to call her. We still don't have a lot of concrete anything in regards to this character just yet in the MCU, aside from the fact that she is death. I'm interested to see what happens next week, what we're going to learn about her character, what is to come with all of that, and see how that progresses, what that means. Everybody seems shocked, except for Agatha, of course. And the interesting thing about that was, back at the beginning of the episode, when her and Teen are kind of still walking along the Witch's Road, going into that next trial, which ended up being Lilia's divination trial, she says, "You can ask me anything, I'm an open book." And he asks her point blank, "Where's Rio?" And she goes, "Anything but that." So there's clearly something suspicious still going on with her character. Rio was definitely there doing something with Alice in the next episode. We're finally going to see like what is going on with Rio's character, what her motivations are, what she wants, where she's going, what maybe she even wants from the Witch's Road or from Agatha, or what her motivations are from this entire series. And I'm interested to see if they show us what she did with Alice, what she could have done with Mrs. Hart. And honestly, next episode, we see her past with Agatha explored, how they got together previously, how intense their relationship was, what her connection to Agatha's son was. Next week is the finale episode. It's going to be a two-parter, 2 episodes in one night, which I am so here for, right before Halloween. I'm really excited for that, and we should be finally getting all of our answers. We should be finally seeing Rio's flashbacks with Agatha back at the Salem days, her relationship with Agatha, her relationship with Agatha's mother, Evanora. We should be finally seeing, what ended up really happening between her and Agatha's son that led to them falling apart. I'm ready for it. I'm so excited to finally get these answers that I've been clamoring for this entire series. It's bittersweet though, because I'm kind of sad it's going to be over. I was enjoying that week to week momentum that we were getting, and that delicious Marvel goodness that I was eating up with a spoon. So excited for the finale, excited for these answers, but bittersweet in the fact that, we are going to be ending our own journey down the Witch's Road. However, I'm really excited to see how this series ends up and where we go from here. Some other really interesting things that happened in this episode. Of course, we got to see Lilia and Jennifer bonding. Lilia and Jennifer finally started to get along after quite a bit of friction throughout this series, if I will say. They always seem to kind of always be on the wrong foot, but this time it seemed like Jennifer was really, truly trying to be empathetic and understand Lilia, trying to understand her time slipping, her quirky, wispy, whatever, and all of those little things that kind of never made sense. She started finally putting the pieces together on her own, with Lilia's help, of course, kind of slipping back and forth as they were finding their way through these Witches' Road catacombs. Speaking of which, they end up wandering into this crossroads of sorts. On one end, they have the old Westview transit system, which was referenced by Mrs. Hart in episode 3, where she was talking about there was a failed Westview transit system. I still don't get how a town as small as Westview needs a transit system like that, but maybe it's connecting Westview and Eastview together, who knows? But it looked like a fully fleshed out subway system with an active car, and Jennifer seemed to think that that would be their way off of the Witch's Road. I have a feeling it's not going to be that easy. And just when they're trying to figure out, should we just leave or should we keep going, the Salem 7 pop through and doing this weird, creepy, synchronized walk past them, whispering, Agatha Harkness, where's Agatha Harkness? So definitely still got it for Agatha. Didn't even seem to care if they did sense Lilia and Jennifer there, but super creepy nonetheless. At one point, Lilia kind of slips back to the beginning of when they first fall down there after Teen kind of throws them off the road, and she sees Rio. And Rio says, don't you recognize me, Lilia? So obviously, going back to my first point here, there is some sort of history between Lilia and Rio. I'm assuming, given the hallucination that we saw back in episode 3, with Death standing over her maestro, not showing Death's complete face, or at least not alluding to the fact that it was Rio at that point, but now clearly matching the overall aesthetic they've assigned for Rio, which, by the way, both terrifying and snatched. She looks gorgeous and also really terrifying. Really fine line there that only Aubrey Plaza can pull off. But there seems to be more to that than meets the eye. So I'm really excited. I really hope that there's kind of similar to how we saw Teen having this connection to each of the witches prior to actually formally meeting them and going down the Witch's Road. I think that we will see there are certain connections between Rio and the witches. I think that would be a really cool thing for them to do. So let's see. I'm excited to have finally that big Rio-centered episode coming. I know we're finally at the finale, so they've got to give us something at this point, right? I'm hoping it's gotta culminate in something here. So I'm really excited to finally unpack all of that and the Rio Vidal of it all. But speaking of the Salem 7, let's talk a little bit more about Lilia's trial. Obviously, there was so much going on here. Each of the witches each of the surviving witches, I guess, each got their own stereotypical witchy makeover. Lilia became Glinda the Good Witch. Agatha became the Wicked Witch of the West, who she claims was actually based off of her. And given how we found out that she has connections to the Titanic, the Hindenburg disaster, she is the original Jolene from the Dolly Parton song. I mean, I wouldn't put it past her to really be the original Wicked Witch of the West, truthfully. I mean, who's more wicked than Agatha frickin' Harkness, right? But in all honesty, she's also the biggest conniving liar in the MCU. So I don't know. Could just be her boasting. I don't know. But I really could believe it. And then we see Teen or Billy Maximoff as Maleficent or Billificent, as I like to call him. And finally, we get Jennifer Kale as the hag version of the evil queen. I think it's so funny they decided to do this, considering that she's gotten almost in every single trial the most glamorous look of all of the witches. And then they stick her as the hag in this one. And she's like, I don't want to talk about it. I thought that was hilarious. Nice little bit of comedy there at her expense. And again, kind of these stereotypical witches, which we all know Lilia hates. She's got this massive chip on her shoulder about the way witches are portrayed in society, things I've gone over in previous videos. And just really interesting to see how this trial kind of unfolded. It started off with just Billy and Agatha. And then after them trying their best and failing miserably, clearly Agatha's no tarot master and Billy is just faking it till he makes it at this point. You know, Lilia and Jen kind of crash through the bookshelf and they're there with them. Lilia kind of takes over. This is her trial after all. And she kind of saves the day, gets the coven moving along on the witch's road and just on their merry little way there. She's, going through every single tarot card that we have seen her shouting out in those random moments of disassociation. It all makes sense now. Things start clicking into place, right? We see, the Tower Reverse, the High Priestess, all of these cards that she has been calling out at random moments, starting to finally make sense as she's doing her tarot reading on all the witches of her coven. So first she tries to do her reading on Billy. And we finally get Billy to admit, what is it that he's actually looking for on this witch's road? And, what question he wants answered. And originally, he thinks that he wants his brother back. Now he wants to really know, is he Billy? Is he William? Who is he? He doesn't know. He's still trying to figure out. He's got this identity crisis going on, given what we learned about him last week, about how his soul transferred into this other boy's body and all these shenanigans have now ensued. So he's clearly got a lot of stuff still going on there. And I'm interested to see if he ever gets his memory back from Westview, if he ever, gets to kind of meet with Wanda, how all that works, because Agatha brought Wanda up, taunting him at the beginning of the episode, stating that, oh, hey, I was your mom's ex-best friend. And he goes, she wasn't my mom. I already have a mom. But then kind of flips his script a little and is like, do you think Wanda Maximoff is dead? And interestingly, Agatha, first she says yes, then she says no, then maybe. Obviously, Agatha doesn't know. She's been trapped in Wanda's curse that she put on her for a while now, obviously, 3 years. So she doesn't know anything about the events of Multiverse of Madness. She kind of just snapped out of it and went right on the witch's road, hadn't really had time to kind of catch up. The only thing that she really knows is that she had that hallucination in her head from the spell of, a corpse that said Wanda Maximoff on the toe tag, which actually was a library card. So really, Agatha doesn't know anything. She's just kind of talking out of her ass per usual. And I'm just really interested to see, where this series kind of leaves that open-ended question of, is Wanda dead? I'm surprised they even brought it up in this episode. And I'm interested to see where we are left at the end of Agatha All Along on a potential Scarlet Witch comeback. Will we get some kind of a hint about it? Will, Billy and Agatha kind of come to something that leads them to believe she's coming back, or that will Billy be bringing her back? I mean, there's still so much open-ended with that, and I'm so excited because I need Mother back, guys. She needs to come back. We need Wanda in the MCU. I'm ready for Scarlet Witch Resurrection at this point. But back to the trial. She reads Billy, he's having this identity crisis. She realizes that she's actually got to kind of read for herself and read on the coven and kind of pull these cards out to each member of the coven. And she kind of talks about, Jennifer Kale being the High Priestess, which we know, Billy being the Tower Reverse. She goes over Agatha. And then finally she gets to the death card and realizes that Rio was death the whole time, which kind of shocks everybody except Agatha. I'm interested to see how that all plays out in the finale. Are they going to be upset with Agatha? Are they going to be scared of Rio moving forward? What is Rio going to say about her role in the universe? Obviously, we've seen Rio depicted in Thor: Love and Thunder in that one cave where he's seeing all of those kind of like pillar beings of the universe, right? He's got death there, the tribunal, he's got eternity. So I'm interested to see exactly how all of that plays out. It was a very clear depiction of death from Thor: Love and Thunder, in the same vein of Aubrey Plaza's look in this series. So it is going to be the same character, it seems like. So I'm interested to see how she kind of ties into the universe as a whole, or the multiverse as a whole, and kind of how how she's just going to play coming into the next, phase of the MCU, and if she'll be back. I'm really interested to see that. So very exciting stuff. This episode was an absolute banger. We see Lilia in her final act of sacrifice to protect her coven. She tells Jennifer that she loved being a witch. She loved that sisterhood element, which honestly breaks my heart given the fact that she lost her entire original coven and she kind of finally found a new one. And now, she passes. But in this moment, she sacrifices herself in that ultimate heroic sacrifice kind of vibe. She flips the tower reverse card and the gravity in the room switches. The Salem 7 all get skewered by those swords in this epic scene to round out this amazing episode. And honestly, I'm kind of mixed on it. First part of me was like, okay, beautiful visual, super cool, super creative way to get rid of them. But also the other part of me was like, that was so easy. And I really wanted to see the Salem 7 at least kind of like fight them at one point, right? And they kind of narrowly escape or something. Like I was expecting a little bit more from them given the kind of threat they were perceived to be. But I mean, we'll see. Maybe this could not be the end. We do still have 2 episodes, so we could be getting, a zombie resurrection of everybody who's died on the Witch's Road, and Rio sends them to attack Agatha. Who knows? I'm interested to see where everything kind of ends up. In a show about magic, especially in the MCU, anything's possible. So I'm really excited to see where things go next week. I mean, we do have a few scenes that from the trailers that have yet to come. Again, discussing that scene with Alice, where she is laying on the floor in her Hot Topic garb, no longer sucked dry of her magic by Agatha, seemingly very plump and lifelike, and someone's running their darkened finger across her face. So obviously there's more to that, more to Alice coming up. There's that scene of Agatha and Billy in what looks like a weird asylum type place. They're like in hospital gowns. And it's like a metallic asylum with like a big purple-y clock or something on the ceiling where she's kind of like holding his head, maybe giving him back his memories or unlocking them or something in one of the next trials. We've definitely gotten the flashback scenes of Agatha from her Salem days to look forward to, and the flashbacks of Rio that we've yet to see. Some kind of big fight happens at Agatha's house still, where Agatha's all cut up and Rio's on this roof. There's a lot still to come, and I'm so excited to unpack all of that with you and see what's in store for next week in the epic finale. So you can follow me on Twitter at Vigilante Vibes. Make sure to check out my Marvel news and breakdown podcast, Vigilante Vibes, a Marvel podcast, streaming on all platforms now. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss any of Nerd Initiative's amazing content. I'll see you guys next week for the Agatha All Along 2-part finale. Bye!